So if you think Reno and Northern Nevada is all about Lake Tahoe and low taxes, you're in for a rude awakening. Northern Nevada is not the paradise everyone's been hyping it up to be, and most people don't realize it until it's too late. And some people even regret making the leap. People come here expecting affordable living, endless outdoor adventures, and small town charm, but there's a lot they don't see coming. So before you take the plunge, here's everything you honestly need to know from a resident of 36 years and a realtor for 25 as well. So here we go. Number one, cost of living is higher than expected. I know for me, when I first moved here, and I bought my first house 25 years ago, you could find a home for $100,000. And what's funny is we bought one for $106,000. And the reason we did it was the mortgage payment on that house was about the same as what it was going to be for a 2-bedroom apartment. Obviously, things have gotten a lot more expensive. And I think people still think of Reno as the biggest little city, small town, and things are going to be affordable. And what can you tell them, especially about home prices and people that are thinking about moving here? Because obviously we talk to a lot of, at the beginning, I call them leads, people that are asking questions. And I think they think we're going to be less expensive, and are people surprised by what the pricing can be?
Definitely. I think if you're from the middle of the United States, we're definitely going to be more expensive. If you're from some of the coastal states like Washington, Oregon, or California, we potentially are cheaper for you. Our median sales price is pushing towards $600,000, which I don't think it has been high like that in
That's the highest
ever.
It's been. Yeah.
Also, we're more expensive than Vegas, and I don't think people know that either.
A lot of times people say, I'm going to move there, I'm going to rent for 6 months or 12 months before I buy, which there are some pros and cons of that. We'll talk about it in another video another day. Rents have gotten expensive.
Yes.
The home prices have got expensive. Mortgage rates have jumped up and climbed up. And so for people, I always tell them, if you can get your living situation figured out, the rest of living in Northern Nevada is, I think, pretty comparable to most of the surrounding states and where people are getting away from. And there's other perks that help with that. But even things like gas or food or healthcare, daycare, those kind of things, I think, as I've looked around, or I talked to my brother who lives in Las Vegas, who has younger kids, it is all pretty comparable. But that biggest factor in this whole cost of living thing is your housing. You got to get that part figured out. So it's just an absolute must. The second one, and I think a lot of people are really not aware of this, is we are a high desert climate. We are at high altitude, and we have the potential. It is rare for very warm weather, very cold weather, crazy winds. All kinds of stuff can happen here, but for the most part, I think our weather and climate is pretty good. But when people are walking around, one of my favorite things over the years being a realtor is you'll get a sea level, low altitude Californian.
Yes.
We go see 2-story homes. They walk up a flight of stairs and they're just like, and they don't understand what happened to me.
Yes.
And so, what kind of questions are you hearing from people about what it's like, or when they start out, like, what are the main questions they're asking?
When you get up at altitude, a lot of them ask kind of how they should acclimate themselves into it. And first off, your first week, depending on your level of fitness already, is going to be a little hard, especially if you live in a 2-story house or potentially you're staying somewhere that has stairs. It's going to be a little brutal there for a minute. Drink water. You're going to get dehydrated. We are dry. We are really dry. We're still the desert. Chapstick, sunscreen are really, really important, but people don't necessarily ask too many questions about it. It's more weather-based than it is the elevation.
Right. And it's the elevation is something I always try to remind them later, because usually it comes up when they figure they're out of breath, or they start to go work out, or maybe they're a runner or a tennis player and they realize, wow, this is a little getting used to.
Yes.
The other thing that we talk to them about is when you are living high elevation, like I said, it's dry skin. I remember being in college and literally just pushing my nose when I first moved here, and I was adjusting still, and I got a bloody nose because my skin was dry. And you get used to it. It takes a little while for most people. Occasionally you might get some headaches at first, and there's some things, but for the most part, the elevation you'll adjust to. The weather, we get a question a lot about the wind. And yes, in my 36 years of living here, has there been times where that wind is blowing off that mountain and it blows 80, 100 miles an hour, and fences and roof shingles blow all over town?
Yeah.
Yes, but for the most part, we do not have extreme temperatures. It does not get super windy. We do not see tons of days over 100 degrees. We do not see lots of giant winter storms and 15 degree with just brutal weather.
Yeah, it hardly
happens. The extremes don't happen a lot, but you just need to be aware this is not living in a environment that is, it's just different for people. They got to get used to it. Going wrong with that theme, another question that we get from people is, and it's my favorite one, is when they say, I want to live in the neighborhood where there's a lot of shrubbery and greenery, and we just don't have a large amount of that. Right. Where do people live if they want to be involved in that?
Well, you can go as far north as kind of Collin Ranch. That's a more established neighborhood that has some pretty good trees that were planted. Those were not originally there. As you travel down the kind of western side of Reno, staying up close to the west, you can get it the Galena Forest on your way up to Tahoe, and then obviously all up at Lake Tahoe in the Mount Rose area.
I'm saying most people that have fancy landscaping at their house, it's something they create for themselves. You have to be a little bit careful because, again, you don't want to use up too much water, and you want to be careful of what your landscaping is. I know for me, I like to keep the grass and the bushes and those kinds somewhat limited. You see a lot in our state where people are trying to do a little more xeriscape, but you can find it, but it's just something you have to realize. We're high desert, like we just talked about the weather, and you're just not going to see that on a major level. Another one that is a problem, if you're someone who needs public transportation. We do not have tons of public transportation here. Do we get this question a lot? I don't know, because I don't think a lot of people are using it. We are a very car-driven city, but we do have it. What can you tell them about it?
I mean, we have a bus system. That's pretty much our only form of public transportation. It runs
mostly inside the McCarran
Loop. I mean, there's a couple bus stops. There's one by our office that will go, but I don't know how often they run or kind of how helpful that is depending on where you want to go, because I don't think it goes very far in terms of out of the city. So if you're centralized, it works out better.
It does go in the North Valleys in a few places, but I'm going to guess it's limited service, limited times. It's not going to be like if you're in New York City where the buses are just running and you're never going to have to wait more than a few minutes. So unless you happen to live really close to where you work and you have a bike or you can walk there, you're going to need a car. We're just that kind of city as far as that goes.
Yep.
Number 5, limited dining and entertainment options. I know for sure the entertainment options have gotten way better, whether it is, comedians or bands and music coming to our town, or just if you're local and you're looking for things for family and kids to do, it has grown a ton. I mean, even just in the last week, I was out and downtown, there's a place called Birdie's that it was an indoor miniature golf, which is great because here in the wintertime, you can't really do it outside. And there's all kinds of new. It was an indoor pickleball place, had 9, I think it would open 2 weeks.
Yeah.
This thing was state-of-the-art. It was awesome. So those were some things. What kind of stuff are you using?
I personally like the art museum. I walk around in Midtown a lot of the time. Just anything that comes up. I mean, my friends and I, we're apt to do some pretty random things. We'll go to the Whitney Peak Hotel. They have a climbing wall on the outside of the building.
They have stuff downstairs too, bocce balls.
They do, yeah.
Obviously, we have tons
Reno Axe
of outdoor activity.
Yes.
But I know that whole downtown and just our area in general, as far as things to do, has gotten a whole lot better.
Yep.
And the dining one, I mean, that is such an old narrative. Our food and dining in this town has gotten so much better, so good. You can almost find any kind of food you want. And it's funny because some of the best places that we eat Thai food, you walk in and the place doesn't look amazing, but the food is amazing. So it all depends on what you're looking for. But it's all over, especially in Midtown.
Oh, absolutely.
Number 6 is the poorly maintained roads and traffic that has come to Northern Nevada. And yes, 30 years ago, when there was half as many people, it was easier to get around, but we have done, to me, an amazing job of fixing the problems. The Spaghetti Bowl and all that interchange has gotten way better. If you've seen the road projects going to the North Valleys, it's in the middle of it. So as the time we're recording, it's a nightmare currently, but it won't be for long. They've done massive amounts of work on Pyramid Highway. They've done massive amounts of work, the Southeast Connector, bringing you around the backside to try to keep you out of the Spaghetti Bowl.
Yes.
So they've done an amazing job with that. And again, as far as poor roads, what can you tell them as to why that's not true?
We're taxing our gas immediately. So I see it every day that my gas is a little bit more expensive, but our roads are maintained well. Obviously, you're going to drive down a road and sometimes you're going to see a pothole, but we do a really good job in the warmer weather to maintain roads, expand roads, any sort of road work projects. I mean, you're not going to blow a tire here because you ran over a pothole.
Gas, if you're in Washoe County, we have a tax on the gas that is used towards strictly road improvement, new roads, all that stuff. So if you happen to be in Fernley or Carson City or the surrounding areas, I always tell people, fill your tank up because gas is going to be cheaper. It could be anywhere 50 to 75 cents a gallon cheaper. But at least in my mind, I don't mind that I pay a little more expensive gas in Reno because at least I know what they're using the money for. And is it perfect? No, but we're doing a really good job, I think, long-term of improving all those kind of things. So that's, again, to me is another old narrative that people hear. If you're thinking about moving to Northern Nevada, do me a favor. Click the link in the description below. It will give you access to our free buyer's guide that will give you a lot of the information you need to start your journey to Northern Nevada. Number 7, and this is an interesting one, it's desert, wildlife, and animals that are in our community. Tell them about where we live and how hilarious this is.
We live in the south end of town in the South Meadows, and every now and then in the colder months, the horses will be down in the neighborhoods, and we'll walk out our front door and have wild mustangs sleeping in our front grass.
Right, and the downside is that I know for me, my front yard grass, I probably need to pull it out at this point. It got diseased from these animals, and now it doesn't grow as well. I know other people that have literally fenced off their front yards to keep animals out of there. But it is kind of a temporary thing that happens in the wintertime, but you got to be careful driving, especially in the morning, because you'll see full size, not little horses.
Yeah, they're big.
Walking down the street, walking down the sidewalks, could literally be standing in your driveway. So it's just something you got to pay attention to. But more as the weather gets warmer, again, desert. So you're going to see coyotes, snakes, scorpions. What other animals do you see in your days of riding horses?
Yeah, you'll see deer. I've seen plenty of coyotes, mountain lions, bobcats. If you live closer to Tahoe, a little bit more towards that Galena Forest side of Reno, you might see a bear. It does happen.
Yeah,
Don't pet it. Don't touch it.
Yeah, the bear's more like the horse thing where they come down on years where maybe there's not enough to eat or they're looking for water or whatever the case may be. But it's not something you see.
It's not common.
But you got to pay attention because you just never know when you might walk out and see something that scares the hell out of you. Number 8, and this is more we hear from our friends and clients and maybe even my parents, is limited healthcare access and having it being hard to find doctors, get into specific doctors, those kind of things. In my time here, there's so many more hospitals. There's a huge one at the north end of Carson now. In South Reno, Renown put a big center up. If you go 2 more minutes down further, there's another hospital. I can't even think of the name of it. I've driven by it 10,000 times. But there's more hospitals, more access, and I think these things are improving and better. The office complex that we work in, when I walk around there, it seems like every other building is some sort of dentist, plastic surgeon.
I mean, our building is right across from advanced neurosurgery.
Right. And so there's just, I think it's improving. Are you getting this question a lot from like clients as far as access goes?
Not necessarily access, more insurance questions than anything. But I mean, between the 3-4 major hospitals we have in the Reno-Sparks area and down in Carson City, you potentially, for the most part, can find what you're looking for. And then specialized stuff is, I think, where it starts to get a little muddy for people, but we'd have to do more research.
And if it's something like, again, we're younger, I'm knock on wood, been relatively healthy, so I haven't really needed a lot of that services yet. But again, if you're someone who's thinking about moving to Northern Nevada and you have questions about that, we can definitely put you in contact with people that would be better served at answering those questions than we are. Number 9, and this is one of my favorite ones, and we call it, like jokingly, California invasion of them coming here. They're the only people that move here and that they're ruining Northern Nevada. And we've helped plenty of people from California. We've helped plenty of people from other places. When they move here, how do they feel? What do they say to you?
For the most part, we're welcoming. I mean, Nevada residents, for the most part, are known for being welcoming. I've heard really positive feedback from clients who have moved from plenty of other states, not just California.
Right.
The only time we really start to notice that you're from California is when you drive. We do not go 85 miles an hour in the fast lane. It's just not a thing here. We're a little bit slower moving than you guys, but just pump your brakes a little.
Well, you should. So tell them to get those California plates off their car
immediately,
as
please.
soon as possible. Right. So they look, at least they feel and look like a local.
Exactly.
There's a handful of street names that if you say them wrong, we're going to know you're not from here.
Yes, Moana,
Kitsky.
Yep.
There's a few others. So we just want to make sure that they know what those street names are so that you can blend in a little better. Trust me, half the people that complain about the Californians moving here are Californians that just happen to move here 20 or 30 or 40 years ago.
Yep.
So they just beat you here. And it's funny to me how they'll complain about as well. But it's just one of those funny things. Just be cautious who you talk to because some people aren't as excited as others about California moving here. We're realtors, so we love the Californians. Come here. We're happy to help you guys. Number 10, and this is an interesting one, is the gambling culture. We have casinos. We have gambling. Gambling used to be a much larger piece of Northern Nevada, especially when only Nevada and Atlantic City had gambling. Now you have it all over California, all over the country. We're much less dependent upon that. If you move here and you have kids and you're trying to raise a family, you can completely stay away from that stuff.
Yeah.
Where would people see it that might be unusual for them that you don't see in other parts of the country?
Gas stations. They have slot machines, all kind of little push button games. I'm not really well versed in gambling, so I don't really know what they are.
Right.
You don't really notice them. Every now and then you hear the little jingle of the sound, but the gas station functions exactly how it usually does. But just right when you walk in the door, you're going to see gambling machines.
Well, I tell people, you see them at a grocery store. You're going to see them in Target.
Yep.
You just see them at a bar and the bar top is. But if you're a kid, you have kids, you don't ever have to see any of that stuff. You can keep away from all that. They've sort of separated a little bit as far as that stuff goes. So yes, we do have gambling. It is a much smaller piece of the pie here in Northern Nevada than it ever was. Number 11, this is one's a little bit touchy subject for some people. We get this questions. We have to be very careful when we answer them, is the lack of diversity. And when I first moved to Reno 35 years ago, when I was going to the college here, I think Reno at that time, literally, if you pulled up the stats, was like 90+%, 95% white. It is much more diverse than it used to be. But we are not diverse like San Francisco or New York or these major cities. It is getting better. I think there's not really much we really need to say about that one other than if you have questions about it, we can give you stats and numbers, but it's something we have to be very careful about when we talk about it. But we just pull up the census data, you were looking at it, and if you want to know that information, whether it's specific to our community as a whole or specific neighborhoods, by all means, you can check that stuff out. Do you get many questions about that?
Not particularly. Sometimes it's neighborhood specific, but other than that, it's not really common.
And number 12, this is the last one, is limited career and job opportunities. And so, yes, we've had lots of tech companies, lots of logistic companies. Where Reno is located, we are a great hub for companies that want to disperse out their materials because where we are between Salt Lake City, Boise, Seattle, Portland, the Bay Area, Southern California, Vegas, Arizona. We're sort of in the middle of all of those. And so it's a great place for them to have distribution centers and things along those lines. So that is something that's been big along with the tech and job opportunities. When we have clients moving here though, are you having them move here specifically because they're taking a local job? Or do you see a lot of people moving here because they can work from home and they're bringing their job with them from somewhere else?
You can kind of get both. I get people who are moving here as a job transfer because of the new kind of companies that we have coming here. We'll get people who work from home that maybe their spouse is retired and they're just finishing up their last couple of years, or maybe they don't want to retire yet. So you kind of get a mix of both, but
we did a little digging because I was very curious about this. I've been a realtor forever, so I haven't actually had to go look for a job other than trying to meet clients in a long, long time. And what we did is we pulled up like the top 20 companies that you could find that were coming here. And yes, a lot of them were tech companies, but we looked them up real quick. You had Tesla, Amazon, Switch, Panasonic, Microsoft, Apple, blockchain. These were all companies that were there. But then we also had a lot of distribution companies. You knew this company. I didn't know. It was called Zulily.
Yep.
And so that was a distribution company. Walmart has distribution centers all over the place. Same thing with companies like FedEx and UPS. Again, because we're kind of a nice central location hub for people. Petco, Jet.com was an e-commerce company that's part of Walmart. I did not know what that one was. But then again, Intuit. And then the local companies like IGT with gaming, casino type companies, Renowned Health. So lots of medical jobs are coming here. We are much more diverse than just tech and, government type jobs. And I think people who think we're not a booming economy, well, you don't go from 200,000 people in Northern Nevada to 500,000 people in Northern Nevada. And if you start surrounding those other areas, we're pushing probably 1 million residents that use our local airport, if you're going to Minden, Gardnerville, Carson, all around. And so it has grown a ton, and you wouldn't be able to do that if your job sectors weren't growing and booming. So these are some reasons why people freak out, and you need to know these things is why you might not want to live here. Our opinions are most of these things can be turned into a positive. And if you have questions, you can reach out to Sydney and I. We're happy to answer them. And hopefully we eliminated some of their fears, but again, this is supposed to be the things as to why they might not want to move here. So you need to know this stuff because again, we don't want people moving here and then regretting it later. And 6 months or 12 months later, they're saying, hey, I need to sell my house unless some amazing job opportunity came somewhere else and they didn't realize they were going to be leaving that quickly. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. If you're someone who checked out this video and you're still thinking about moving to Northern Nevada, check out this video we did right here about the 20 reasons why you'll love living here.